This conference will now be recorded.
Definitely. So what you said is definitely true. I think right now more than ever, if you did have some holes in your tracking analytics kind of framework, I think now is when that's really going to start to surface more than ever, just because there's so much room for variance, right? So making sure just to go back and reconnect with your teams and say, all right, guys, look, let's double check, make sure that our analytics tracking code is truly implemented on all of these site pages. Are we tracking things properly? Are we filtering things properly? That's in an article that I wrote recently in a conversation that I had on LinkedIn. I was talking with some fellow marketers and saying, hey guys, look, I know we are kind of, grabbing at everything right now, and some people are seeing decreases, some are seeing increases. But in the same way you don't want to overreact to decreases, we don't want to overreact to increases either. Namely because, there can be technical analytics issues. So as a good practice, just for example, in Google Analytics, anytime we're setting up, a Google Analytics view, we want to make sure that we're filtering out traffic from our own offices and speaking from influence, from the influence office and from our clients' offices. But now with everybody working from home, all of that traffic that we've been filtering out to make sure it's not skewing our analytics data, now we don't have people's home IP addresses filtered. And everybody's working from home, right? So all of this tracking and analytics can start to get super skewed because we're seeing data and traffic coming from our own employees searching for us, or our own clients searching for us, or all of that starts to kind of get lumped into all of this stuff. And we've got to make sure to look closely and diagnose if we really do have true issues, right? So I think what you're saying is spot on. Make sure that your tracking in the beginning is accurate and kind of responding accordingly. And I think what you mentioned with Google Search Console, that's huge to go in and look at period over period view of what the keywords people are searching for to get to your site now are and how that might have changed. And another thing, like you mentioned, if you are running paid search, that queries report in paid search is just a marketer's dream, right? Going into your paid search, account in platform and review the actual queries that people are punching in that trigger your ads, looking at organic keywords, those queries, and then also if you have the ability going into your website, if you have site search enabled and looking at once people do land on your site, what the things they're looking for are. Those are just, three categories of just a wealth of information to help you figure out how people's habits are changing, how their behavior is changing, just so we can respond accordingly now during this crisis and make strong plans for the future too. And I see Mike here in the chat has a question related to that. So Mike says, so I get not wanting to overreact. That said, this doesn't look to be a short-term issue. So do we have any suggestions for starting to pivot to a longer-term adjustment in user behavior? Evan, what are your thoughts on that? Not overreacting, but starting to kind of adapt and create a longer-term plan.
Yeah, so I mean, it would probably vary greatly on the business, but yeah, I mean, just fixing what you can now, like if there were any kind of updates that you wanted to make that would be like real like heavy hard work or could like initially show like a small decline, like if you were planning on migrating a domain or something like that, that now would be a good time. I'm not entirely sure if that's like answering his question, but I feel like now is a good time to start foundation laying if you weren't already, or doing those kind of heavy hitting tasks that may show a small decline, but that's not necessarily a big deal right now, and making sure that everything's in place for when user behavior starts picking back up to the norm. I don't know. Did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, that makes perfect sense. I think a lot of times as marketers, we want to do the thing that has the most immediate impact and prioritize those quick wins while also kind of building the groundwork for longer term programs or projects and things like that. So if from the organic perspective, you've been focusing on taking advantage of timely keywords and getting some quick wins and optimizing your product pages and stuff like that, that is still going to have an impact. But like Evan mentioned, let's say you've been putting off migrating your domain to a different destination, and you just haven't pulled that trigger because you know that you're going to see some short-term dips in rankings and dips in organic traffic. Knock that stuff out now while there's, some level of uncertainty and we're not banking on that kind of stability 100%. Making those investments in your infrastructure now and building on what that new norm might be. Because like you said, Mike, this is not looking to be a particularly short-term issue. So making sure that your foundation is strong right now is incredibly important. And I've been telling people, look, at a time of uncertainty like this, go back to your foundation, go back to your roots, and really, really go back to what you know. Because anytime there's uncertainty around us, grabbing on to the thing that is kind of that unshaking value of your company, or that promise that you make to the consumer, or your brand standards, being firmly rooted in all of those things is going to make all these pivots so much easier. And the same goes for your technical infrastructure, whether it's reevaluating your analytics, platform, whether it's going through and cleaning up your analytics property, which can be a beast of a project in and of itself, migrating those domains, deleting old pages that are no longer there to kind of help with your crawl budget and things like that. Doing those foundational things right now are going to set you up for so much of a better position whenever we do come out of this and we get some idea of what the new norm is going to be, right? I think just realigning on your core is just super important. Really quick, so Angela, I do see your question here in the chat, and congratulations on seeing that traffic increase for sure. Like Evan mentioned, we have a lot of clients that are seeing actual upticks in traffic, whether that's because they're in essential business or they're providing something that's of value during COVID. They're creating content that's quality, like you say you guys are. I'm going to hold on answering this question for you because this is a little bit longer of a response, but I do encourage you to send us an email whenever I do share that info, and we could talk about your issue specifically when it comes to retaining that content. But also, just to give you guys a little preview, next week we're going to be joined by our Director of Search, Dave Anderson, where we talk about how to shift your content marketing initiatives to take advantage of the situation, obviously not take advantage, but be responsive to the situation, and set yourself up well for the future too. So we'll get much deeper into that. Evan, I see we're kind of coming up on time, and I know we talked about some really good stuff, but if there were a few points that you would leave people with before we go, what would those be? Let's hear those impact statements.
Yeah, so the biggest thing I want to take away is truly diagnosing if it is an organic search issue, because it could be different channels, it could be site-wide, and diagnosing where the issues are. It's likely not site-wide. It may be, but it could be a specific section, it could be specific pages. Truly figuring out where, like why and where the issues are, and then acting accordingly once you truly have that understanding. And then acting accordingly is likely going to look at who is now ranking top for the queries you want to target, and what can you do better to satisfy the intent of that specific search.
For sure. Hey, Evan, really quick, on that topic, I know you said that you prefer for people not to search themselves. are there any tools you can suggest to get a clear picture and an unbiased view of what websites are ranking for what keywords?
Well, you could use rank trackers. I know we use Ahrefs at Emfluence. There's any number out there, but then you can also just use Google Search Console to see what keywords you personally are ranking for. I mean, I'm honestly a fan of just searching incognito for search result page like analysis. I wouldn't use the like, oh, we're ranking 3 today, oh, we're ranking 4 today, but you can at least get a general idea of what Google wants to show in that search results page.
Awesome. That makes sense. Evan, any last parting notes or tools for people to check out, or any last thoughts?
I mean, just play around with Google Trends. It's a fun tool if you haven't done it already. And type in your business name and see if see what trends you can find.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Evan. I appreciate you, sitting in on this call, answering these great questions, and giving us some insight on what we're seeing on the front of our clients. We appreciate it.
Yeah, it was fun. Thanks.
Awesome. So, guys, just want to share a couple of things with you really quick before we go. We will be continuing to field questions for our what we're calling marketing therapy sessions. So if you've got a specific question like Angela, where you want to hear, what are some recommendations for how we can set ourselves up well for when we come out of this, or how do we keep our momentum going and things like that, make sure that you send us an email to expert@emfluence.com. And what we're doing is we're taking all those questions and we're going to direct those to our in-house professional that's best qualified to answer that question. And we're setting up 30-minute consultation sessions. No strings attached, no questions asked, no agenda. We just really want to help all of our friends out there who are trying to navigate this just like we are, right? So please do take advantage of that. You can subscribe for updates on our upcoming weekly topics that we'll be speaking about here. To do that, you can go to more.emfluence.com/subscriptions. There you can sign up for our newsletter. You can tell us what you're interested in hearing from us and what you're not. And we promise we won't spam you with stuff that you don't want to see. And then next week, make sure that you RSVP and join us for, like I mentioned, our session where we'll be talking about how to shift your content marketing initiatives to make the best of a bad situation, to make sure that you're coming out on top later, and that you're just well prepared to take on anything that gets thrown at us, because it's an uncertain time for everyone, and we just want to know that you're not in this alone, and that we're here to help. So if that's it from you guys, we're going to sign off, and I'm looking forward to seeing all of you guys next week. So until then, see y'all.